Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Life in Law, special Thanksgiving edition. And today we have our special guest, Dr. Tanya Fowler. Thank you so much for joining us.
My dear, thank you ever so much for welcoming me today and of all the days of the year when we're here to be thankful and here to join in the unity of man, even when our families, our personal families might be near and far. So I really appreciate you having me today.
And I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And so maybe we can just start off with you just telling the audience a little bit about your story and background about you and your case.
I sure can. My purpose for joining you today and your audience, your supporters near and far, is to bring forth the matter of where is baby Carly. Baby Carly is my maternal, court-awarded custodial granddaughter who's been missing for 1,188 days, about 26,000 hours since she was taken into custody by Child Protective Services, otherwise known as the Department of Human Services, DHS for short, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Baby Carly was 5 months old when she was last seen, October 7, 2022. Neither the family or myself have been allowed to see her. We don't know where she is. We do not really know her condition. And I am heralding to the world that I act now as a scribe to tell the world that we do not know if my granddaughter is dead or alive. I have a lot of suspicions about her well-being and whether she is dead or alive. And I would hope that by appearing here on your platform that I greatly esteem, especially since you have been so brave and amazing about sharing your story, is to also speak directly to politicians, people of power and privilege, people that are popular, people that have powers to speak in government, and people who have had experiences with Child Protective Services, whether as children or parents or even great foster parents who might have something to offer. And I always welcome those stories that are good stories about children and those stories that are good stories about foster parents or even people who've worked in Child Protective Services. And again, I thank you so much for having me. So my hope is to marshal action leading to the discovery of baby Carly. Where is she, dead or alive?
Well, that's a devastating situation. And I'm so sorry that you and your family are dealing with this. And we all hope for the best end result and for her to be returned. I know that you had previously sent me a few pictures, which I can share on the screen in a moment. And so, as far as with baby Carly, when was the last time that she was seen? What was the date?
The date was October 7th, 2022. Again, not to overburden your audience with repetition, I am the maternal, custodial, court-awarded grandmother of 3 grandchildren. The oldest is 23, the middle-aged child is age 13, and baby Carly, who's the subject of this discourse, is 3 years old. The reason why I've been so involved with my grandchildren is because of my daughter's lack of capacity for parenting. My daughter has psychiatric illnesses in the acute range. She has drug and alcohol impairment in the acute range. She has a history of arrest and conviction for child abuse, child neglect, and abuse against the family in the acute range. She has a history of arrest for a number of other things in the acute range, a history of 302 involuntary psychiatric commitments in the acute range, a history of homelessness, and a very profoundly integrated belief that despite her impairments, she can parent. She profoundly believes that I cannot parent. And my daughter has been profoundly opposed to the placement of the children with me. So she plays a big role in what has happened to baby Carly. and no matter what, it is very important for my daughter to inflict pain, punishment, injury, another fight, flight, another police emergency, another eviction, another fight on the street, another displacement, another traumatic experience for each of my grandchildren. Whereas the normative adaptation for parents is to protect their children from all harm, my daughter can only achieve stability when her children are subjected to harm. And another part of the mystique of Child Protective Services is that for years, my daughter has sought to wrench the children away from my stability and care and to literally throw them into Child Protective Services where they are injured, harmed, and alienated, and then use her powers of persuasion as a custodial parent to leverage the children back out to herself, and then the cycle starts all over again. So for 23 years, I've been literally rescuing my grandchildren from my daughter and CPS, and now the case of the baby is the most extreme.
So it looks like this is one of the flyers that you created, and this is describing the incident which occurred on Friday, October 7th, 2022. And it looks like it is a little difficult to read, so I'm just going to read it so that everybody can see what it says. It says, on Friday, October 7th, 2022, Dr. Tanya Fowler had taken her 4-month-old granddaughter, Carly, to CHOP, Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, King of Prussia, PA, for lab work. As Fowler emerged from the lab to process to the neurology consult for the baby's seizure disorder, she was shocked. She was accosted by a CPS/DHS worker whom was taking directions via video call from a supervisor, Makita Hunter, a social worker, DHS contractor, Turning Points for Children Community Umbrella Agency, CUAS. Sorry.
For sure.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, Community Umbrella Agency, CUA for short. Hunter ordered Dr. Fowler to produce the baby's feeding bottles. Hunter disputed with Dr. Fowler's infant feeding and insisted that the normal 2-ounce serving was too much. She can only have spoonfuls. She can only have spoonfuls, you dirty, filthy Jew. Hunter ordered the worker to take the baby from Dr. Fowler's arms and put her in respite. Carly was hungry and wet and taken away before even seeing the doctor. Hunter failed to register case notes to the DHS system as to the baby's whereabouts. Dr. Fowler and the family have been denied contact with the baby or information about her medical condition. They do not know if Carly is dead or alive. According to Dr. Fowler, the situation with Hunter was aggravated. I was terrified by her persistent aggression, malice, threats, and stalking. I feared for my safety and that of the baby. I knew disaster was looming. Therefore, before the kidnapping, I submitted pleadings for injunctive relief from Hunter to the courts. Carly had been placed with me by DHS August 22nd, 2023. From August 24th, 2023 forward, Hunter denied me the certifying documents to get Carly urgent medical care, such as the PA 42.6330 shelter care order, the kinship letter, and the safety plan. Prior to the kidnapping, I had triaged Carly's medical care on my own, which Hunter obstructed in rage. Her prior attempt to kidnap Carly from our home, September 26, 2022, was thwarted by the police. Her subsequent attempt to abrogate Carly's protection from abuse order, PFA, which conveyed to me full physical and legal custody order, was also thwarted. Consequently, she scribed false and defamatory process, recording which she swore to the dependency court. I have recorded proof of many additional harms and violations, including her persistent screaming and threats. I'm not going to give you those kinship papers because I'm going to take that baby. I'm going to take that baby away from you, you dirty, filthy she-Jew. So that's what they said to you?
Yes.
And did you get any of these interactions on camera, on video or recording?
I did.
And I just want to see, you also had sent, this is another photo we have that you shared with me. I have up on the screen. And this looks like the last photo of baby Carly seen alive.
That is the last she was seen. That's at 9:30 a.m. October the 7th at the hospital. And she was happy, clean, and just an amazing infant. Also, I've cared for. I fostered 11 other children, not through the foster system, and I've taken care of many more infants. And she was really very different. And so I find myself to be very capable of infant care.
And in this photo, about how old was she?
5 months old.
Yeah, I mean, she looks like pretty healthy. She got, looks well fed. So, I wouldn't see any issues, but it's absolutely crazy that they are doing this. And now can you explain what this is?
I can. I was able to work with a lot of people, investigators, investigative reporters, whistleblowers, parents, and other sources through investigative records. And I was able to find this one particular record, which is a 900-page record showing medical injury of baby Carly. I counted in my first analysis 120 medical complaints and injuries. And what goes with this picture is allegations of sexual abuse committed against baby Carly within 60 days after she was taken from me and placed with a foster couple. They are named in this record. The record shows that after allegations of sexual abuse were made against the couple, she was taken and placed in 2 or 3 other locations, and then she was placed back with them, which to my knowledge is where she is now. And you can see the date here, I think, which is February 23rd, 2023.
Yep. And this here looks like this is the emergency family court cover sheet. And it says, excuse me, it says that until further order of the court, Tanya Fowler continues to have temporary sole legal and physical custody of minor children, Carly, and the rest is blocked out. And then
yes, I brought that in to authenticate my claim of jurisdiction, standing, custody, and everything else through Montgomery County to demonstrate to the world that I was at that time the full physical and legal custodian, not just a grandparent.
And did they acknowledge that, or do they still pretend that you have no rights?
Correct. Philadelphia decided to impede my rights, to ignore me, and just take the baby away. She was taken in Montgomery County, which is where they do not have jurisdiction. If you want to go back just one page above, we don't have to go into any detail. This is the order for protective custody. This is given when DHS intervenes. And I just brought that in. You don't have to dwell on it. Again, to demonstrate to the world that a dependency matter was opened against my daughter, not me. The baby was taken from my physical custody, but I'm not a party to the dependency matter. Philadelphia will not allow me to speak or assert my rights of custody. But they've continued to do things against me as if I were the worst of parties. But I'm not a party to the matter.
And then, can you explain about this?
Sure. That's an old picture from my oldest grandson who's on the autism spectrum. And this is an image from one of our modalities, which is equine therapy. So there we are at the horse farm. And we are having an amazing moment with horses. That's Dharma, who's a therapeutic horse and one of my favorite Clydesdales.
Is that a llama?
Oh, yes, that's right. There's a llama in the background. Yeah, the llama's name is Rue. And so I've been advocating for children and families for a very long time. And this is one of the therapeutic modalities that I insist I think that children on the autism spectrum should have an opportunity to have, which is being around the horses. So Dharma, despite her size, is very loving, very tender. and wonderful companion for children like my Shane. He's 23 years old now.
Oh, wow. And it says that your first student was Donnie, a third grader, and that was in 1975.
I started teaching in 1975, and we had to have a practicum. And Donnie was my first student, and he was also my best professor, because everything that I learned about teaching children, all the curriculum, all the tools I had, as soon as I met Donnie, I had to put that stuff aside, and we had to go outside and play football for an hour. And then he might do work, maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes on task, and then we had to play football again. And I learned immediately that I could not impose what I thought was a way to learn on Donnie. I had to learn how to work with Donnie. So then we had to integrate math into football.
And so I just think I just want to highlight here on the screen, we have the bio, your bio. And I just want to point out a couple of things for the audience, like, that you are a biomedical anthropologist, and your expertise combines healthcare, health crisis and culture, practices in multicultural education, training and research for health education, business, and community. You hold a PhD in allied anthropology, and it says that you have done your doctoral dissertation on the private migrations of Eve, Africana woman, and the rites of passage in personal narration, and that you have your philosophy of multicultural education is that everyone is educable, and when instruction includes all of the learning, communication, and cultural modalities. Educators in pursuit of best practice are lifelong learners, advocates for children, and activists who meet the mandate of diversity impressed by the global village. So I kind of want to shift into talking a little bit more about CPS in Philadelphia, because it just seems crazy that, you have credentials, you have things that you're doing in the community, you have all these things to back you up, but yet they're trying to say that you somehow aren't competent or able to take the baby. So I think that they're definitely doing this to people who are well educated professionals, people who are showing that they're high functioning members of society, yet they're allowing people who are terrible parents, who are abusing their children and putting their children in terrible situations, to keep their children. So do you feel that CPS in Philadelphia is taking kids from good homes and putting them with abusers, and keeping kids in abusive homes and not removing them? And what can you say more about your experience about that agency?
Thank you so much for asking. I have experienced Child Protective Services in Philadelphia since 1985. First of all, often in my professional capacity, because for years I taught and trained in a lot of the university systems, and my practice was to teach and train physicians, nurses, therapists, and social workers and others in culturally appropriate diagnosis and assessment of families, so as to avoid the unnecessary displacement of children from their homes and to deliver services that were appropriate for families. So amazingly, and I even trained in the court system, so all of the stakeholders involved in this matter, the judge, the GAL, well, they're not even really social workers, they're case managers, and even the physicians at one time would have been my students, which is another thing that makes interaction with CPS or DHS right now so utterly painful. 20 years ago, we didn't have the terminology of medical kidnapping, but that's what my practice was designed for, so that professionals could avoid the hazards of what I'm going to label as medical kidnapping. Now, I would not have work. Why? Because in the ensuing years, trillions and trillions of dollars have been poured into Title IV program, Title IV program that subsidizes child protective services. And so many immunities have been granted to the stakeholders. You can't get over them, you can't get under them, you can't get around them. In my case, because I've been interfacing with family court in Philadelphia for years because of my daughter's defect, I'm in the system. I'm well known. I am a certified foster parent. As a matter of fact, for the purposes of your audience, the same agency that ordered the removal of my granddaughter had just certified me as a foster parent 3 days before, on October the 3rd.
And that
So,
was CPS in Philly?
yes, that's right.
So they said you are not allowed to have your granddaughter, but you can be a foster mom.
I was certified, I was onboarded, I had the whole range of home inspections and all of the clearances, and I don't have a problem chewing gum. So and the baby's feeding was observed and certified in my home 3 days before she was taken by the same agency. For those of you who do not know, what's happened in Philadelphia is that DHS subcontracts 10 agencies that are dispersed across the city, and they are arranged according to police districts. And those are called community umbrella agencies. So when DHS discovers a child, they open a dependency case, they then technically outsource all of the case management to one of these CUA agencies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In our case, it's CUA number 5 that's been involved. And I can kind of leap ahead. And CUA 5 has been rated as one of the least well-performing, one of the worst, in other words. So sorry. And it's been associated with the deaths of a lot of infants over the past 3 years. So again, to get back to the locus of your question, a person like myself with 2 doctorate degrees and a lot of experience teaching at all of the local universities, name one, Drexel, Community College, Temple University, I'm probably more bitterly hated than someone who is not in the know. So typically the way this works with the people who work overall in child protective services or in the courts, a knowing or informed person is not well liked necessarily. We're always seen as a threat and as somehow an endangerment to our children, when in fact we're an endangerment maybe to the presumptions that people leverage when they're working in the system. I'm sorry, am I making any
No, you're definitely making a lot of sense. And I think this is what more people need to realize, because a lot of people have this misconception in their minds that you need to be some dangerous, violent, drug abusing person who beats your children and burns cigarette butts on their arms and starves them. This is what people think you need to do to lose your kids. And when people say, I did nothing wrong, my rights were violated, I lost my children, I'm a good person, they think, what is this person not telling me? There's got to be more to the story. You must be lying, or maybe you're just not telling us everything. And it's like people refuse to believe that this is real until it happens to somebody they know, somebody they love, or it happens to them. And this is not discriminate. I have talked to people who are doctors, lawyers, like, professionals. It doesn't matter what you are. They will still discriminate. They will not discriminate. They will do whatever it takes to make money. And a lot of what you touched on with the Title IV and all the funding that they get from that, and sometimes with the Title IV-D when there's child support involved, it's like free for all. I talked to one mom, she was out of Florida, and she was telling me that there's a situation where they had several children, and her 18-year-old or 19-year-old daughter called the police and called CPS on her and her husband. So basically the daughter was on drugs. She's 18, 19, out of control, gets angry at mom and dad, decides to call up CPS, call up police, make false accusations, which were then cleared in court. The parents were falsely arrested. And then while they were falsely arrested, the teenage daughter then goes and with CPS, and they say, okay, you take temporary custody of your brothers and sisters that are younger, and we'll give you a one-time payment of $20,000 and then $1,000 a month going forward for the kids to be in your care. So think about it, $20,000 up front. That's a salary for some people. I mean, think about it. If they're doing that for each family, how much are they getting? Because then there's all these reimbursements and everything like that. So I do believe that what CPS is doing, not just in Philadelphia, but all across the United States. And each state has whatever you call it, DCF, CPS, DCYS. They're all the same. Any of these child protection agencies, they are stealing money. In a way, it's stealing, but what they're doing is perfectly legal under these laws. And, Congress made these laws when Congress isn't supposed to be allowed to dictate family relations. Congress is only allowed to pass legislation about commerce. And so what does family relations have to do with commerce? Now they're turning kids and people into commodities. And so I know that you had mentioned in your notes, and I think I'm going to share my screen again for a moment. And I know that you had shared this, and you stated that you wanted to talk about the significance. And so is this like a Eastern Orthodox icon?
Yes, it is, my dear. This is
Okay.
something that I show at the end of a formal presentation. I'm also an expert witness. I have a history of serving as an expert witness in the courts to help to solve cases of, for instance, adoption of families that have certain ritual practices and so on. And so when I'm talking in court to policymakers and court officials, I do not go in the door talking about God's humanity and the children and save the children and rights. I go in talking about funding and policy trends and how we are now going to see that trend of all of these trillions and all of this immunity. It's going to change. And we're going to be moving more towards performance-based delivery of services, which is something very different. And it's going to look more like fewer removals of children and more cases where children are provided something called SCO. It's an old model, but it's coming back. Services to children in their own homes. So, hey, Mr. Courtman, hey, Mr. GAL, hey, Mr. Crooked foster parents who are doing horrible things to children. Hey, all of these people on this train of all this money and abuse of children. This is going to change. Your immunity and your dollars are going to go down. Then there's going to be oversight, because with performance-based services, now you're going to be requisitioned. You're going to be audited. You're going to have to prove that you purchased a bed for this family instead of taking their children. You're going to have to prove that you remedied the heat situation. If the house wasn't warm, you helped to get the heat on. You're going to have to, this is a model that we had in the early 80s. So this is my line of discussion, if you can kind of get that, when I'm talking in the court, and then I'm talking about the science of anthropology and how it's determined a lot of the language in the courts, like consanguine and effing. And then I use this icon. Even though it is a religious icon, it is an amazing encyclopedia into history, culture, religion, and civilization. For those of you who can't see it or may have seen it before, may see it in a different way, it comes from the Greek Orthodox world. Features Jesus of Nazareth, a figure in history, culture, and religion. Jesus is seated on the lap of his mother Mary, and behind her is her mother, and then behind her is her mother. And so Jesus, if we were to take Jesus, at the time of Jesus, paid fosters and paid foster system was unknown. It was unheard of. The mere thought would have been an abomination. But let's travel back to the time of Jesus and take him away from his mother and throw him into a paid foster system. Now he has not his ancestry. He has not his matriarch. He has not his identity. He has no idea of his powers and his authority. And these women are bereft of the fruits of their loin seeds. And so if Jesus were to be placed in a foster system, the whole Western civilization wouldn't be what it is. We base everything in the West, in a sense, on the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus, even our calendar, AD, Anno Domini, after the period of Christ. And we have a moral ethic of ethical humanism that was propagated by the teaching of Jesus, and that is empathy and compassion and forgiveness that wasn't really a global product before Jesus. So I use this to demonstrate to anyone that if foster system and child protective services had been allowed to interfere with the family of Jesus of Nazareth, even our whole, and if they're allowed to continue, the human species will no longer be what it is.
Absolutely. And I think that this really stuck out to me a lot because I'm Greek Orthodox and so are my kids, and we're baptized. And so to me, like going through all of this, my own personal struggles, I've gotten a lot closer to my faith. And I felt like sometimes you feel like there's no hope and there's no hope in the system. So you put your hope and faith into God and grow stronger in your faith. And I don't think I've ever seen this icon. And I just looked and did a quick search on it. And it says that this icon is called the Generations of the Holy Family from the Mother of God's side. And the Saint Maria that it's referencing is the one at the top, which is the great grandmother of Jesus, which is the mother of Saint Anna, and that's the mother of Mary, the Virgin Mary. So we have Saint Maria, Saint Anna, the Mary, mother of Jesus, and baby Jesus. And so it says that this Maria was, according to the Orthodox tradition, Maria's husband is usually called Matthias or Mathan, a priest from the tribe of Levi. They had 3 daughters: Maria, mother of Salome, who becomes the mother of St. John, the theologian's mother; Sobia or Sophia, the mother of St. Elizabeth, who's the mother of St. John the Baptist; and St. Anna, the mother of Mary, the Theotokos, or the Virgin Mary. Because of that, St. Maria is honored as the great grandmother of Christ and the ancestress of God. Sometimes she's also referred to as the foremother or the ancestress. What is her story spiritually? We don't have a long biographical life of her like later saints, but we know that she is seen as holy, faithful mother and grandmother, part of the long line of people whose faith and obedience prepared the way for Christ's coming. She's connected to the mystery of how God works through families across generations, not just one person appearing out of nowhere, but a whole line of people cooperating with his grace. Icons like this are meant to show that Christ's incarnation is real and human. He has a mom, grandma, great-grandma, real ancestors, and real women who carried his lineage in their own bodies and lives. Why does the icon say Saint Maria and not Anna or Mary? It's because it's supposed to be the icon for her, for the great-grandma. The others have their own icons, but this is just her, personal. So I think that's actually really powerful because, like you said, imagine if they had removed just one of those generations and placed them in foster care. How would have history changed? And, it's like people talk about family and ancestry and bloodlines, and it's powerful. And the trauma and fights that our ancestors fought it's like they say, like your grandmother is born with all the eggs that she'll ever have in her life. So it's like you're in your grandmother's womb before your mother's even born, in theory. So it's like you carry that trauma.
Thank you so much for breathing life into the icon. That's why I say this for the very last when I'm in court.
Yeah, I hope the audience doesn't mind the little theology lesson there, but
well, I want them to take all of this away with them as a lasting kernel. Thank you so much. So when we're talking about 87 or higher percentage of children who are unnecessarily removed, we're talking about a huge chunk of humanity deprived of their ancestry, their legacy, their genetics, and the continuity of their reason, their very being. So if we keep magnifying this, then who are we going to even be as a species?
Absolutely. And, I think that before we got a little more into the exploitation of federal funding and what's going on with that. And I noticed that you had stated in some of the notes that you sent me that you are a delegate to the Fathers Movement. and about dads who care about CPS. And so I just wanted to know what your thoughts are, because a lot of women who I've spoken to over the last couple years in this realm of what's going on with CPS and family courts, people have shown me a lot of research and statistics and things I've seen myself. And there are, on both a federal and state level in many states, funding incentives for promoting responsible fatherhood, they call it. And so, like, it might be like the Connecticut Fatherhood Initiative, CFI. Their mission is to promote responsible fatherhood. But like on their website, it's just promoting single father homes. And so what it turns into is, the idea is, okay, father's rights, let's get our, because, a lot of these men will say, okay, for many, many years, it was like, you get divorced, the wife gets the house, she gets the kids, she gets everything, and the father just disappears and he only sees them once in a while everything goes to mom. A lot of times that's what it was like for many years. But now, after so many years of it being where like women seemed to get the upper hand, a lot of these men organize together, fathers, which, believe me, I've seen how well organized they are, not like the women. A lot of these moms groups, they're catty, they are competitive, jealous, they fight with each other, block each other, attack each other. The men, they organize. There's some of their groups have hundreds of thousands on Facebook, like men's rights, like USA, all these different ones. And they'll ask questions like, oh, I need to file a motion for modification. Who can help me? Then they'll get like all these people saying, or they'll say, I haven't seen my kids in a year. My ex won't let me. And they'll say, oh, go file a contempt, go to hold her responsible. And they motivate each other, give each other tips and pointers, and create this like community of support. And now that strong support network of fathers lobbied and tried to then create these like funding initiatives, and there's grant allocations for this on a federal level, as well as states like Connecticut, which was the pioneer in creating this nationwide, also have, I know it's called CFI, Connecticut Fatherhood Initiative, and that I think there's a national one, federal one as well. So people have said now it becomes where, since it's, if you get paid a funding incentive every time that you remove a child from a mother and transfer it to a father, then there's a direct financial incentive to take kids away from their moms and give them to their dad. Now, when there's no motherhood initiative and there's no organizations or resources or anything for promoting responsible motherhood, for example, go to any of the men's prisons. They have daycare, they have like playgrounds, they have all these things so that they can have these visits when their children come to visit their fathers who are in jail. They have access and visitation grants, which allows them to get help, free legal assistance to get their kids for visits and things like that. Go try asking for it as a mother. Trust me, I've tried. And they say, sorry, we can't help you. Those things don't exist. There is nothing for mothers like that. So now it's violating the equal protection where mothers are getting discriminated against, because if everything's pro-father, then you can't get that extra bonus check if you don't rip the kid from their mom and give them to dad. So they don't care if the kids are breastfeeding, if they're 5 months old, 2 months old. They don't care. If they can get an extra check, if it's 20 grand to take the kids and put them in a foster home, but 40 grand if you give them to dad because you get that extra father's money, then they're going to do whatever they can. So as somebody who has stated that you're, promoting this with the fathers movement, what are your thoughts on that? And can you speak a little bit about your work and what your experience is with that part?
I sure can. Thank you so much again for asking. I have a visualized goal, which was to establish an institute for men, Institute for Optimal Thought Lodge number 2. And this would be address all phases of men's life, development, their health, and so on. Because when I first envisioned this, men were left out of the dialogue and left out of the funding and resources for programs. You had women and children, and everything was for women and children, but there was very little for fathers or for dads or even for men. And I grieved because so many of the wonderful men that I've known in my life course neglected their health, and they died too early, and they left us vulnerable and poor. So I got over being angry with them for defecting, and I just thought, well, I can do the best that I can do with my knowledge and skills. So when I say I'm a part of the dads movement, I cite dads like Men in Trenches, Darren Guai, who publishes a lot of shows and who supported a lot of people. I haven't encountered the dads that you're mentioning who have benefited, and maybe sometimes unfairly, through what sounds like another family separation act, really. By any other terms, if it favors one parent over the other and eradicates the rights and the privileges and the funding towards the mother, it's family separation. But I spend a lot of my time, sometimes around the clock, with grieving dads who have lost their children to CPS, who have been emasculated, who have been torn down and torn apart in every way, who do not feel like they have been able to support and defend their families, to protect their families against an intruder. And I know of 2 dads who've killed themselves in the past 5 years, and 1 mom who dropped dead on a show. So my heart goes out in particular to dads, because I want the fathers in America to stand up and to form their militia. And the first thing people think is, the Second Amendment. Well, no. God ordained men to protect themselves, their lives, and their families. People say provide and protect. Well, I have another whole theory about that, and for another time. You're not a provider. Men don't provide. You can't provide an apple tree. The Most High provides a tree. You can't provide water. The Most High provides the water. But you can protect. You can produce and you can protect. That is a native, natural-born role without any training or education. And what happened, for example, in the case of baby Carly, where are the men in my family? They're dead, or they're weak, or they're absent. So people like Makita Hunter was able to terrorize me for a long time and follow me and stalk me, because she knew that I didn't have 6 strong brothers. If I did, and if I belonged to a community where 1 man could make a phone call and 100 show up, none of this would ever have occurred. So since I did not have the benefit of this ring of protection, I'm a proponent for men forming it, so that other families don't have to go through what I go through. So forming a militia, first of all, it means, in my thinking, it means forming an assembly where there is agreement, there is harmony, and there's an agreement to live and to think in peace according to the mandates of the Most High, adhere to the Constitution, but also organize, form communities, and stand up for our children. And if you need to, a lot of the brothers that I've known in this movement have been to jail for silly stuff, traffic violations and stuff like that. Okay, go to jail. Go to jail for your children. And while you're in jail, convert other men in jail and come out stronger and more committed. But don't just stand around and do, until the men mobilize, even the ones I realize who have frailties, because I do believe in redemption. I do believe in recruiting those men who have been miserable as dads. I do believe if they breathe another day, they too can be inspired to come up and come out. And if the men took this over, we wouldn't have this problem. Imagine. I'm sorry, go ahead. I can go on and on.
I think that it drives and feeds into this like polarization, because a lot of people get so like divided, right? Pro mom, dads are abusers, always dads are abuser. And then you got the other side of the spectrum. Pro dads, moms are always lying and making false allegations. Dad should get full custody. Time for dads to be the ones having more custody. Now, if that's like 2 ends of the spectrum, you get people who are like in the middle. But because they're so divided, it's like people cannot see eye to eye. They cannot even like identify with one another, because they'll just be like, well, I don't want men in the group. But so I think each case on an individual basis, you have to look at the whole picture. You have to look at the facts, who's involved, was there abuse involved, who reported it? Like all of these things should be looked at. And a lot of times it's very obvious. If there's an abuser, they'll support the abuser getting the kids. If there's no abuse and they want to abuse, they will take away from a good, loving family to put them with the abuser. So it's like, this is their pattern across the board, whether it's family court, CPS, juvenile court, like whatever it is, this is what they're doing. So do you, you've said many times that you maybe believe that baby Carly might possibly not be alive. Do you believe that she is still with us, or what is your gut feeling about the situation?
I pray every day before the Most High that she's alive, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's dead, and I would be shocked if she is alive. Based on what it looks like, what the baby has been through. I could say one more word about dads. Again, if baby Carly had a functional dad, she wouldn't be going through this. She would have had a dad in court speaking for her, but would never have gotten to court. So I adore God's family. That's why I went into anthropology. It's the study of God's family. I want the unification of man and female. I want the divine rights of mother and father together. I want the eradication of these systems that divide dads and put men and women in contention and reward one over the other, and streams of funding away from dads who have to pay into the court system in order to see their children. I think it's sadistic. Or the way that errant mothers are awarded the children, or errant fathers are awarded the children. So I just wanted to get that out there. So that's another reason why I want to see even dads who have been separated, even dads who are not well, to stand up and to advocate for children, even if they're not children of their own, to live in the militia, to live in peace, but to live in an organized public fashion. I kind of envy, I envy a lot, certain communities that have a force of manpower, where sometimes the women don't have to come out in the streets and do anything necessarily, but you have 100 men. I would love to finally be like here at home while all my uncles and brothers stand up and do the defense work out there. What is that like? I mean, I would love to have that, where they are preventing a force that is so strong, where they are using their manlyhood for the protection of their families. I live to see that day. Kind of like the Martin Luther King movement, where Dr. King marched for, at first, the core liberation of African people, Black Americans, but also for everyone. And he stood up and he stood out. And a lot of people from every persuasion stood with them, people that were not affected by discrimination. Lots of white American students died, actually, in the cause, who had nothing to gain or nothing to lose. So I'm looking forward to that movement of fathers, so that people like myself can finally see some respite and maybe get on with the business of living who we're supposed to be, instead of being constantly trauma-stricken. When it comes to the case of baby Carly, I proclaim full-blown medical kidnapping, and the esteem of some of the people who've looked at this, many investigators, many people. This is the worst case of medical kidnapping in the history of medical kidnapping. Baby Carly was hunted before she was born, specifically by Makita Hunter. My middle grandson had been committed to DHS the year before baby Carly was born. He was maltreated, specifically by Makita Hunter. He was separated from me, and then his mother was doing all kinds of things. I went and found his dad, brought his dad into the picture, and he was finally discharged April 2022 to the care of his father. And father and I have had a reasonable relationship. When my daughter got pregnant with baby Carly, she was living with me again in Montgomery County. She was literally, when she grew closer to delivery time, she was going from Pennsylvania to New Jersey to Delaware to try to escape detection by Makita Hunter. People might say, what am I talking about? Generally speaking, I'm overly generalized. When your family has had a referral with Child Protective Services, your name is in a repository for life, for generations. You are targeted for generations. Even though in theory, reports are supposed to go away and they're supposed to go into a blind vault, they do not. They can be resurrected at any time. New births in your family are tracked. And there's a monitor on you. So when you go to the hospital and have a baby, if you had a referral by Child Protective Services 4 years ago, don't be surprised if a social worker just happens to show up in the birthing room.
You know what? It's crazy that you say that, because like when I was a kid, there was a lot of abuse going on, but like many times there was like DCF got called to the home. They came, they investigated, they found nothing wrong, and they left. But so there was like all these reports. I never got taken away till then. When I was 14, I went myself to the police department. This reported sexual abuse that happened to me in the home from age 4 to 9 by my brother. And they basically said to me that my mom told me not to come back, and they said to me, go with your dad. And then so there was DCF involvement from the age of 14. They put me with my dad, but then they ended up saying the place my dad had was uninhabitable. It wasn't up to code. It had all these violations. There was no hot water, no heat, no nothing, no food. So they put me temporarily in a foster home for like a week or two until I was able to like basically run away from it and go down to the DCF headquarters myself and demand that they let me go with an extended family member who had a safe home. And they did, because I advocated for myself. But all of that from like, you know, that's over 10 years of history with DCF in my childhood. And they tried to give me an ultimatum at the age of 17, 3 months before or it was like I turned 18 in July. I mean, I turned 18 in September, and in July, what's that, like 3 months before, they said to me, because I had an arrest that was based on like a nonsense charge. And they said, okay, well, you have two choices. You can either leave this courthouse today with a DCF social worker and go live in a foster home for the next 3 months until you age out, or you could spend the next 3 months in York Correctional Institution in Niantic, Connecticut, which is the one and only women's prison in the state of Connecticut, where murderers, rapists, the worst of the worst, and all the criminals go, because there's only one women's prison and there's like 10 men prisons. But the point is, it's like almost max security. And so it's really, really intense. And so they're like, you can stay in max security prison for 3 months or a foster home. And I had already had like trauma from being put in the other foster home where I felt like those people were insane. I ran away from it and all that stuff. So I was like, I told them, I was like, if you make me go back to foster home, I'm going to kill myself. And they're like, okay, we're sending you to prison and we're putting you on suicide watch. And that's what they did. And they put me in prison with no bail and all. It's crazy what they did. And I was 17. As soon as I turned 18, it's like I didn't matter anymore. And then years later, when I turned 23, I turned 23, then I had my first baby. I remember a social worker comes into the hospital room, and so her father and I were not married, by the way. And he was not supportive at all in that birth or pregnancy. So immediately after she was born, he's like, all right, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home and shower and my friends go, I'm going to go out for a little while. I'll be back tomorrow. And left me alone in the hospital, which apparently some women have their husbands packing a bag for themselves to be by their side with a newborn. And you would think that you'd want to be there with your newborn baby, but no, he wanted to like go play and do his stuff. So I'm sitting there alone in the hospital room with my newborn baby that's just hours old. And in walks the little social worker. Oh, hi, I'm just a social worker. I just want to just check and see how you're doing. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then she's asking me all these questions and like filling out answers in her little paper. And all the questions she's asking me are like, do you have a support system? Is your family supportive? Do you have supportive friends? This and that. Keep in mind, she sees me alone in the hospital with nobody. Like I had like one of my friends came to see the baby. My mom came to see the baby. I didn't really want people there. And like my ex was with me, but then he left. So like I was alone for a lot of it. Then like my ex would come back, then he'd leave. His mom came, but like it wasn't like somebody was with me there constantly. Versus if you have a husband, it's harder for them to pull these tricks. So they go when you're like delirious, sleep deprived, all this stuff. And then she's asking me all these weird questions, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like asking me like if I feel like hurting myself, and all these stupid questions like they ask you at the psych ward to try to like you say one false word, boom, you're committed. And so it's like that's what they do. It's a trick, it's a trap. So I was just like, no, I'm fine. And then like the second time around, they did the same thing. But my ex, it was with his second father, and he was staying with me. He stayed the whole time. He didn't leave, but they still had a social worker come in and it was a little bit more discreet that time. But when I was by myself, I felt like I was being hounded. It's like they're like, oh, and then of course it's like, why are they sending social worker in here? Do they do that for everyone? And then I heard that they also will drug test you at the hospital without your consent or knowledge. And if it comes up positive for like even like pot or like anything, they'll just like take your baby. And so also there's no informed consent. You have to consent to a medical procedure. They can't just test your urine for things without you knowing. So like they're going above and beyond, violating so many things. It's crazy, but I just thought that was striking that you said that. And every person that I've spoken to that has been in foster care has said that they were sexually abused. I was luckily not. I was only there for like very short time, but it's like if the people are getting trafficked into these homes where they're getting a make believe parent that gets paid to do the role, and like obviously you saying you're a foster parent and you're not doing it for the money. A lot of these people are doing it because they want money, so they don't care about the kids. They just look at it as an easy paycheck. Then they ignore the kids. If they're getting $1,000 a month for the kids, they're buying the kids the cheapest clothes, the cheapest food, and pocketing the rest. And so if they're getting paid to bring them from point A to point B into one home to another, and then you get a payment every month, and then during that paid in period of time, they're being sexually abused, that meets every definition of sex trafficking. And so like this is literally what they are doing. And like this is why like you mentioned before about fathers and stuff too. And I wanted to say something because like I think the problem is that we don't have a lot of good men in the world. Like a lot of these men, especially if they get raised by a single mom, or maybe they don't have a father to look up to growing up. So then when they have a family one day, they don't know how to be a father. And so then these men are developing like feminine traits where they want to be treated like a girl and they wanted to be chaste and all this stuff. And it's like the women are being more masculine, where women have to go out there and work. Who wants to entertain a man when you got to work a job and slave away and do all the work? And then, if the woman is able to stay home and the man fully provides financially, then she's going to feel like feminine. She's not going to be like, okay, if she knows that the bills are paid for, whether she works or not, she can choose to work, but she doesn't need it. Now, women are working 2-3 jobs just to get by and supporting themselves 100%. And then the men come in and they want kids and stuff. And then they get married, they have kids. And then it's like, they realize like, okay, not only do I have to do all the cooking, do all the cleaning, take care of the kids, take care of everything, but now I'm splitting the bills. Like this is what, then they get divorced and then you have more broken homes. But I think a lot of it is that like a lot of men don't have a good examples and role models. And then there's a lot of abuse and the narcissism and things like that, where it's like generations and generations of harm. And I think that you have to have more people who are willing to break the cycle and say, look, like my father was abusive and cheated on my mom or whatever. But as an example, if somebody said that, they could then say, I'm going to be a cheater and I'm going to, abuse my wife. And then it could continue until finally one son in the generation says, no, I watched my mom get hit. I watched my grandma, and I'm not going to ever touch my wife. I will never put my hands on a woman. Like, or same thing with addiction. Like you can either replicate the negative things that you are seeing others do, or you could learn from it and say, look, I saw how it destroyed their life. I'm never going to do that. And so I think like a lot of it, like these young boys growing up need guidance. They really do.
You touched on a lot of points. One is the intergenerational curse. And once your name goes into that system, it never comes out. Number two, again, the powers of protection when men are righteous and they can collectivize. So when you have that baby, and I was there with you in the birthing room, in my mind's eye, very empathic. If you had 6 brothers, 6 uncles, 6 anybody who were there, that would never have happened to you. No one would have embarked on you, I guarantee you. with the presence of 6 men who don't have to do anything. You see, men are so scared sometimes, the effeminized men, like, oh my God, but because they've been robbed of their powers. And they've been robbed of their powers by a lot of illicit sexual promiscuity that we encourage in our society, which drains men of their natural powers and their natural authority, which leaves us again vulnerable. So even getting back to the case of baby Carly, I went on the streets looking for a man called Tyrone that my daughter named as the father. Yes, I did. I took my brother. I've spent a lot of time combing the streets and went to this neighborhood and that neighborhood looking for Tyrone. Found him with his mama. Showed them the picture of the baby. Hi, Miss blah, blah, blah. Here's a picture of you with my granddaughter. But as soon as she was born, and Tyrone, do you guys want to step up because she's in the system? Can you, because you can get her out right now. What's no problem. Oh no. Oh no, we don't. Oh no, we don't. No. Like just
Wow.
so far from my mind's eye, I can't even imagine a world where someone would knock at my door and ask me to save a baby and I didn't stand up. One of the young ladies that I fostered is still in my life today. She came into my life when she was 15, and she was the same age as my daughter at the time. Her mother's paramour had been doing things, horrible things. He did go to jail, which was still too good for the things that he did. And I'm cleaning the stove. I used to take it out on the stove. So as a young professor, I used to pull the stove apart, which was already shining like new, and clean the stove. You know, I mean, we all have our things. So pull the stove apart, clean the stove.
That's a pretty productive strategy there.
Pull behind the stove and make sure that's shining. You can eat off of it. And she came to me and she put her arms around me and she said, Aunt Tammy, I love living with you. Why? Because I just yelled at you about that room upstairs. You got to go. Did you do your homework? You know, by that time she was taller than me, and she said, "That's why. I've never had a curfew. I have never had anybody to make me do my homework. I've never had anybody who lived in such a clean, organized home. I love when you yell at me because it's making me better. I don't understand what's wrong with Evan, but I'm going to come through this. I'm going to be like you." She lost 50 pounds thereafter, completed her schooling, went through the Habitat for Humanity program and purchased a home in Delaware, pursued a career, and really shaped her life. And she has given me so much love and care and credit I don't feel like I deserve. I was just being me. I loved her. But my point is, even during that era, I knew righteous foster parents, Miss Liz that lived across the street, Miss Pat down the street. We did know people who fostered children who really cared about them. But guess what? In the 1980s, at least in Philadelphia, there were still social workers who were human beings, who knew how to broker the system, who knew how to go in and not take people's children away because the lights are off. Or they call it lights, the electric's off. They knew how to get a little subsidy to help the family get the electric back on. And how to massage whatever it is that they told. Well, there was a new wave, and all of those people were put out of the system. And the new wave, entered the new wave of people that are just dehumanizing robotics. But if you don't, do you have enough time for me to comment about medical kidnapping?
No, yeah, you have enough time.
Okay, I was going to go back to the hunt for baby Carly, and I had started the sharing the experience of having my daughter now in her 9th month of pregnancy, going, and when she feels like she's about to deliver, going to a hospital in Delaware, and maybe going to New Jersey to avoid detection by Makita Hunter, who was already tracking her with the intent of snatching my granddaughter. Why? Because of her genes. We already know what's in the gene pool here. What is medical kidnapping? It is a multi-trillion-dollar industry designed for the literal kidnapping of children from their families, their parents, and their homes. There are primarily 3 institutions that participate in this, primarily hospitals or clinics, schools, and child protective services. Now, there's hundreds of other supportive institutions that are also funded. But these are the main institutions that are the portal for medical kidnapping. What are the purposes of medical kidnapping? Organ harvesting, tissue harvesting, and the sex trade. What are the incentives for participating as a stakeholder in medical kidnapping? Greed for money, lust for power, and a compulsion to put children in pain. When I say a compulsion, I'm going back to the 1970s definition of doing things to children or other people, if you understand what I mean. We used to call it forced compulsion. It was not a sexual act. It was forced compulsion. So with these people that I can name, if you took away the money and you took away the power, they would still be in this for the compulsion, because once you start doing things to children and disabled people and people who are vulnerable, something happens in the psyche, the deep canine psyche, and this becomes an addiction unlike any other addiction, unlike heroin, unlike any other substance. It is a compulsion. The person just cannot regulate. That is why I'm 68. In my era, when people like that were in prison, they didn't stand a chance. The other prisoners would handle that, if you understand what I mean, because they knew that this is incurable. And we've even had a person of state status, I don't want to mention anybody, who has openly declared that this is an incurable disease. So baby Carly was manhunted for her unique genes, for her little organs, for her tissue. We can see over the 900-page record what happened within 30 days after she was taken from me. Her hair was burned off of her head. We can see that she's had lead contamination. One of the worst things, even worse than imagining that the baby was sodomized because she was hemorrhaging, is hoof and mouth disease. Now they call it foot and mouth disease. What kind of conditions could she be kept in when she can't even crawl that she would contract foot and mouth disease? That is a daily torment to me. My mind cannot conceive of what they did to her. Foot and mouth disease? What happens very often with these subjects is they are caged and they are chained. Why? So that when they're incised or their organs or whatever is being done to them, so they won't crawl around and damage the site for the purposes of further experimentation. Whereas Makita Hunter contended with me over a tablespoon of applesauce, I can see that my granddaughter was starved. She won't eat. She can't eat. She's crying all night. She's cried so hard that her eyes are glued together. She's cried so hard that now she has respiratory problems from the neglect. They don't know what to feed her. They're just giving her cow's milk. She has a very, very valuable, and this goes on for 900 pages, falls down the stairs before she could walk. A venereal disease. Did you hear me? I know you did. I'm sorry. But it is also, I look at these pictures every day and I wonder how people can call themselves human beings and how in the world someone could take my granddaughter from me and continue to award her to these animals.
You know why? Because you tell this to the average American with the average education level and the average IQ, and they'll either call you a conspiracy theorist, crazy, or a disgruntled litigant who just can't accept what happened in their case. You bring up due process violations, violations of the law, all these things. They don't care. They will literally just say, we don't believe it. And this is what makes them be able to continue it, because if it's always like doubting the victims, nobody ever believes the victims. Even if you show proof, they still don't believe you. But then it's like the people doing it can just be like, oh, they're lying. And then just like, oh, we believe you. So I think that the biggest issue is that the public is so in the dark about the reality of what is happening in these child protection agencies. Like, they don't do anything to actually protect children. And it's actually like really, really messed up. And like, the stuff that you're describing is like really horrific. And of course, we don't know for sure if she's alive or dead, or we don't know exactly what's happened and what hasn't happened. We can only guess, we can only speculate. And a lot of times I feel like, if you have a certain feeling about something and your intuition, usually you're onto something, but sometimes our anxieties can make us think the worst. So I think the best thing to do is to just continue to expose what's going on and put public pressure out there. And I think that by continuing to do podcasts, continuing to spread the message out on social media, not only for your own mission of finding Carly, but also for that other people can wake up and see what is going on. And like there was a case the other day I saw in the news in Connecticut. There was like 3 14-year-old girls who they were supposed to go together to go to a sleepover. And so the parents knew that they were going to a sleepover. They go into some house in Hartford, Connecticut. And then when they get there, there's like 5 or 6 men, and they just start like sexually assaulting the girls. Then they basically like keep the girls with them for like a weekend or a whole week against their will, start sex trafficking them, making them go meet with all these different men, saying things like they have to tell the men that they're 20 years old, even though they were 14. And if we put 5 fingers up, that means you have to stay with the men for 5 minutes. And they're just basically like selling these girls to traffic them. And of course, the police were called, DCF was called, whatever. And what do you think they did? Absolutely nothing. So one of the girls involved, 2 of her aunts decided to go on their own manhunt. So they literally went door to door, knocking on doors in neighborhoods and like aggressively trying to find it. They're in one neighborhood, and one of the neighbors kept telling them, "We think the girls are in that house. We think they're in that house." And the aunts were like banging on the door. Nobody's answering. But the neighbors are like, "I'm telling you, we saw them go in there. They're in there." And like the aunts forced their way into the house, kicked the door down. I don't know what they did, but it said they forced entry after knocking, and nobody opened it. So then when they got in, they found the girls. So these girls were only rescued because their 2 family members cared enough to go do what the DCF and police couldn't care less to do. And who knows where those girls would be now? They'd probably be sold off in some international sex ring by now if the aunts didn't go find them. So, sometimes you have to take justice into your own hands, and people need to realize that these governments are not here to like care about protecting us. Like they just want to exploit and profit off of our kids, and they get off on the abuse and this like, they're just like, for them, watching somebody else suffer makes them feel good because they're just sick people.
That is the true definition of a sadist. I have a couple more words, and I realize that people doubt medical kidnapping, but there are 2 more things. In the case of baby Carly, we're Melungeon Cherokees, which means that our gene pool, we are Afro, Amerindian, Scott-Irish German. And my people came from Ireland and all over, and they landed in the West Indies and migrated straight to north from Georgia, all the way to Ohio. We are in part the result of genetic experimentation. We are a unique genus in the world. Thomas Jefferson had a formula. We had breeding plantations. We had the biggest, darkest black buck, Mandingo, like a 6'7" guy, and a thin, light, delicate mulatto. And by mulatto, I mean maybe a woman who might look more like J-Lo phenotypically. You match the 2 of them together, and then you do certain crossings. If people read Thomas Jefferson, if they don't, they can just read Thomas Jefferson. He had a whole mathematic formula for making a mulatto, an octoroon, a quadroon, which means that one of the 4 parents was black, a quadroon, that means that one of the 8, great grandparents were of a certain persuasion, and so on. So what does that mean? It means that on the world stage, in terms of genes, if you take people like the Han Chinese, who are not always genetically diverse, or you take other groups who've done a lot of group intermarriage or intramarriage, our gene pool is extraordinary because of the diversity of it. It isn't the survival of the fittest. It's the most diverse of the fittest. In other words, that gene pool that can survive under certain environmental circumstances, under certain trauma, certain crises and stressors. So what does that mean? It means on the world stage, when it comes to harvesting organs, we all know that there's lots of pharmaceuticals that are made from human parts. I myself used to use something by a company called St. Helena. It was a hair formula. It was a conditioner. It was made from placenta.
Wow.
Okay? This is going back, you know what I mean? And we thought it was okay because we thought that, you know, woman just has a baby and they just take the placenta and they put it in this. Well,
There's
now
big money in that. They steal the placenta and they sell it after birth, and they don't even tell you.
now, okay, so now we understand all of the pharmaceuticals that I will call vanity pharmaceuticals that are consumed by who? Women. The injections here and the injections there, injections everywhere. For the vanity of women, not even life-conserving pharmaceuticals. So women largely are the cannibalistic. The people who are going to birth a new generation, because they're actually literally introducing other people's biomaterial. Not just people, babies. Why is it that we want hundreds and thousands of abortions? Because we want biomaterial and bioorgans. Organs, I'm sorry. So for people who doubt me, they can go ahead and doubt me, but tell baby Carly that she's okay.
Well,
Tell her that she's fine.
It sure makes sense why they want to keep pushing promiscuity and casual sex culture and telling people it's okay, just take a Plan B pill, just do this, and then, oh, that fails, don't worry, just get an abortion. And it's like they push heavy over sexuality of the youth, making it so sex is about lust and not procreation, making it so that everything is distorted. And then it's like generations of kids growing up in broken homes, generations of kids watching their parents only from a screen because they can't see their kids because they're getting ripped away, or they're growing up thinking that they were abandoned, or that they think about how many people you knew that were adopted when you were a kid, and you thought, oh yeah, maybe their parents gave them up for a better life. I'm sure most of them, their parents begged and screamed not to take them, and there was a forced adoption in some way. And it's like, I think that this is a really, really big issue. And like you said, it's not just for baby Carly, like for so many kids, and, you know, praying that she is alive and out there. And maybe one day, if, you know, if she's ever older, if things don't get better by then, if she's not found, then at least you have things like on the internet and things like that where she could stumble upon it and see the truth.
Well, I am never, ever, listen, by the way, not to you, but to the fosters who call yourself human beings, I hope you're listening, because in later episodes, I will be on here and I will expose you and your names and what you have done. So you want to fight me in court for the adoption of my baby granddaughter, watch out. I'm everything that you thought I am. All of these things that you wrote about me in court and all of these lies that you told in court, the truth is coming for you. Okay, so I do have an adoption petition pending in court. I am not going to back down. I'm not going to weaken. I think all of these stakeholders thought that the longer they could prolong this case for 3 years, the more they would weaken me. In fact, what they've done has the opposite impact. It just means that more light is being shined. And more light is being shined. And every knee must bend. Every tongue must confess. The Most High is coming. So this is my granddaughter. These people also have lied in court and said that they're my affines. A foster woman told the court that she was my spouse, affine meaning related by marriage. And later she alleged in a PFA that she got against me that she and I are the parents of my baby granddaughter. How sick, how twisted in the mind could you be? Do you really want her gene pool? Go have your own. Someone has told these people that they have an inferior gene pool. And by any means necessary, they'll try to take ours. The Most High made you perfect in his sight, you people. I can barely call them
You know
that.
what? I'm starting to realize what you were saying, because it makes sense. Because like a lot of these like so-called elite families and royals and stuff like that, they do a lot of like inbreeding and stuff, and then they have like terrible genes, or they're getting like sick and they're always dying and they always have birth defects and stuff. So like if you're gonna take like the most polar opposite type of people and breed them together, then their offspring are going to be very diverse, like you said. So it does make sense that then there's going to be less of a risk of like all these gene mutations, and more of like a pure kind of like, mix that's not like tainted. So it's interesting, and I think you're onto something with the DNA, because I've seen like a lot of people that have more like exotic things, like me, like I'm half Greek, half Egyptian. And so like my dad is from Egypt, my mom is from Greece. So it's like, I feel like that's like an interesting mix. And then it's like, you see people who have like more native blood and stuff too, that are saying similar to what you're saying. So I think, and I didn't know that. You said it was Thomas Jefferson?
Yes, Thomas Jefferson, despite all of the other things that he did, I think he's the most brilliant American president we've ever had. He was very scientific, and he was very instrumental in designing the breeding plantations, were specifically not just to increase the number of enslaved, but the quality of the enslaved and different categories of the enslaved for the purposes of longevity and biodiversity. That's a fact. I mean, everything we're saying is a fact. But also, if you notice, there's a certain class of elites. I won't say by race and class, but we already know what I'm talking about. And it's been a trend for the past 20 years for them to go get some little colored kids. Okay? They skip over all the white kids with blue eyes and blonde hair. They're no longer a trend. Nobody wants white kids anymore. Okay, they want some little colored kids. For a while it was the Korean kids, and then it was the Cambodian kids, and then they like girls, and they like to integrate and show the world that they have all these little kids from Haiti and everything. Look at us. If there's true altruism and you truly want to enhance your family by taking in children, do so. I mean, a person that mixed us in, but why does it have to be colored kids? What was wrong with the white kids? I mean, can't they stand a chance? Because there aren't a lot of black families that are going for white kids.
That's true.
I mean, remember that movie, The Jerk? We maybe never saw Steve Martin. Is kind of a cute movie. He's presumably white American. In my field, I understand race is a fiction anyway. It's all a lie. Okay, so I just want everyone to know. I'm just referencing it because other people do. But he grew up in a black family, very dark complected, from the Delta. And finally, he reaches the age of the majority, and they're at the dinner table, and they're like, you're not black. And it's a shock to him. He's like, I'm not. They're like, no, you're not black. So on the one hand, it shows a family's love. He wasn't a white kid. But then on the other hand, he's now at the age of his majority, and the world is going to begin to see him a different way and put him in a different category. So his true family is preparing him for his ventures in the world. And then he goes out in the world and has an experience with a different identity. So I also did want to add that I did my best to save baby Carly from medical kidnapping, because I know the setup. I have a position paper right here on anatomy of medical kidnapping. I can tell you each and every phase. I understand how she was hunted, and I was forced by Child Protective Services to take her to Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to the foster care and adoption clinic. What is medical kidnapping? In the history of Pennsylvania, there haven't ever been that many adoptions. Adoptions sometimes occurred when children were not reunified with their families. Adoptions sometimes occurred when people who had children remarried and the new spouse wanted to adopt a child. But adoptions were established in Pennsylvania in orphans court.
In which court?
Yes, orphans court, which is in some places, equity court or probate court. Benjamin Franklin established orphans court in Philadelphia. It's a seminal court. What was it for? Not just for orphans, but based on the British Commonwealth under the dower marriage system, wealthy gentlemen in the British Commonwealth, the old empire, could only have one legal wife whose wealth they inherited through the dower system. But they could have a whole panel of mistresses and concubines and side pieces and outside women. And all of these women had different stations in life, different statuses, different social. Some of them were prized, highly prized and highly sought after as famous courtesans. So orphans court, in my opinion, was also established so that the decedents could be acknowledged by their fathers and so they could inherit property. So dads sometimes were adopted, or children were sometimes adopted post-mortem after the father passed away. The Jamaicans also inherited this system where fathers would acknowledge their outside children or their children that were extramarital in their registry. That was the function of orphans court. Philadelphia, in front of everybody, while everybody's eyes were wide open and under cover of daylight, moved adoptions from orphans court, which is in the Commonwealth, the Court of Common Pleas, the civil division, to family court. And all of the DHS adoptions are heard by this very same judge.
Wow.
All of the other regular adoptions are heard by someone else. So you don't stand a chance of going to a real court to file your adoption. It's filed before the same person. Right here, tell me, what is medical kidnapping? A foster care, an adoption center? One day, as we continue, I'll invite the audience to see what happened October the 3rd during the medical visit at Children's Hospital. It was an utter disgrace. And I knew down to the details that I was lucky to get out of there that day with baby Carly.
And you have a video? You have a video of that?
I don't have a video of it, but I'm a videotape of it because it was so horrible and because I'm looking at these idiots posing as the physician and the social worker, and I'm thinking, I can't say a word. But if any one of them was my students, I would make sure that they never got their license the way they're treating me now and the way that they're treating this baby now. And the doctor was doing things to her like she was a piece of meat. It was really utter, it was a whole setup for what is medical kidnapping. I mean, I could go on and on. But in the meantime, I do want to say that, if you don't mind, I would like to thank my cousin Herbert, who's law enforcement, chief of police, my sister Nicole, my brother Tony, my mother Claire Fowler, baby Carly herself, my grandchildren. And I do want to say a word for Sergeant Diane Barkley. Sergeant Diane, I hope you're watching this at some point. She's wonderful. From the 5th District Police, Philadelphia Department. Amazing. She's an angel. Officer Ponte, Sergeant Barkley's supervisor over at the 5th District. You guys are amazing. Officer Smith, I've had amazing, good experiences with law enforcement almost universally. It's been the courts. And I also do want to say a word of commendation for Montgomery County Court. They gave me full physical custody of both grandchildren, and they gave me full physical custody as attachment through my PFA side, the big custody and the small custody, exactly in keeping with Pennsylvania 235324, which is a law, which says that I have standing for custody when there's an open dependency matter. So the court itself, I think, was anomalous in terms of doing the right thing by me. It's just that I wasn't able to get that court to talk to Philadelphia so that things were not disrupted. And also in closing, I do want to let your audience know that for people who are going through this, please continue to stay in this. Don't give up. Don't quit. If you cry, cry. If you have to cry, cry. If you have to crawl up in a knot in the bed by yourself and just feel the edge of despair, go ahead and do it. If you want to wallow in self-pity, allow yourself to wallow in self-pity. If you relive every moment over and over again, do it. Okay, open each pain and incise it again, because one day the healing will happen. One day a miracle is stepping in. Even though you don't know them and you do not know who they are, they're allies and advocates waiting to help you. They're angels of protection and mercy descending around you right now. I pray also for our children near and far. When we cannot be there, that the hands that touch our children do so with love and kindness when we cannot be there. I pray for the wisdom and the mercy of the Most High to surround all of us, because people like you, my love, and what you've been through, I read your postings every day. You just come up every day. I feel so close to you. I really do. You know, I applaud you for your courage and for what you put out there. I pray for you and your beautiful children every single day. I thank you so much for being able to use this medium and this resource to reach out to people and really to achieve your own healing. I wish you a healing. And you know that all of us grieving parents are a new bloodline. This is a new bloodline. This is something we hadn't anticipated, but we are now related by blood. And it's the one blood from the Most High that transcends every other barrier. So I also wanted to let you know and anyone know that since I'm up around the clock, I'm always available for prayer. Anyone ever wants to pray, or anyone just wants someone to tarry with them through the night. The old definition of tarry means I just sit up with you.
I like that. Sometimes it's nice just to know that somebody's there, and that means a lot. And I think prayer and having hope and continuing to keep fighting towards a goal and keeping your eyes on the prize, I think it really does make a big difference. And a lot of people in this, they really give up. They just let themselves go. They turn to drugs. They turn to alcohol. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But like you said, like there's so many people who have helped me or guided me along this journey. And sometimes I say, like, was that person an angel? Like sometimes it's like somebody just swoops in when you least expect it and like gives you a little nugget of a lead to look into or something. And it just like opens up a door and it's like, wow, everything is happening in God's time. And so I think you have a good attitude about everything. And, I admire your strength and continuing to keep fighting and staying strong with all of this. And so are there any closing thoughts that you maybe want to leave the audience with, and or is any message you'd like to hear, like baby Carly to hear, or anything you'd like to leave us with?
Well, thank you so much. I want to speak to the spirit of baby Carly and know that she's surrounded by a divine light and the love that never quits. I am those mothers who are the mothers. I am the Miriam. I am the Mother Mary. I am Sarah. I am those mothers, the grandmothers. And I was born with the seed kernel for all of my grandchildren. She is my soul. But also all of the other children are too. And I just pray again for all of the parents who are in agony, and especially on this day, Thanksgiving. Let us give thanks in our heart for another day, even though it seems gray and grim, and it may seem despairing because we're separated from our children. We can still find ways to give thanks, and we still have to find some joy by the mercy of the Most High and conserve that in a little place for our children so that they can feel our joy and feel the solace wherever they are. And I want to wish you continued life, health, and strength, my love. You're beautiful inside and out. You're faithful and diligent inside and out. And you have a purpose and a cause. And I know you may already know what that is, even beyond this. So God bless you and keep you. May the Lord continue to shine upon you, be faithful unto you, and give you everlasting peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us today. And, I think the key pieces for today is try to find something try to practice gratitude. For everybody out there listening, try to find one thing you can say, I'm grateful for this, for what I have, or who I am. And just remember, because gratitude can change your whole mindset. Instead of feeling like, oh no, poor me, it's like, okay, well, I'm so thankful that I have my health. I'm so thankful I have this. And you appreciate things. So thank you for giving us some nice messages and sharing your time with us today. And I look forward to, you're welcome to come back on anytime and we can have a follow-up, maybe go into more detail about some of those events that you brought up, and we'll continue to bring exposure to this for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is a maiden voyage. I'm looking forward.
No problem. It was my pleasure. And we'll talk soon. Thank you again.
All right. God bless.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.